Thank you folks for being early and joining us today. We will be getting started at 6 p.m. Eastern. So we just have about 10 more minutes and then we'll be getting started, but appreciate y'all for joining early.
Hello.
Hey, Erica.
Hey.
So we're gonna get started in a few minutes. Folks are on, and we're gonna get started in a couple minutes. Okay, welcome y'all. We are going to go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you for joining us. We are on National Bailouts webinar series for the Black Mamas Bailout. And today we will be discussing feasibility and needs assessment. And I am Arissa Hall, the Director of National Bailout, and I am joined by some lovely folks. Delane Powerful from National Bailout as well. Well, everyone is a part of our collective. With Delane Powerful, who is a staff member of National Bailout, Erica Perry, who works with Wealth for Black Lives, and Mark Anthony Clayton Johnson from Frontline Wellness Network and also Movement for Black Lives Policy Table. So, and we also will be joined by Dr. Nubian Sun of the Center for Resilient Individuals, Families, and Communities, aka CRIFC. But today we are going to be getting into the things. And this webinar series is a weekly webinar series that will be going on until May 13th. And it'll be focused on different subjects, but we'll be here every Wednesday until that date at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking about all things or most things related to doing a successful bailout. And as we spoke about last week, National Bailout is moving and shifting in response to COVID. So we are starting to do bailouts nationally. So this is also, we really want this to be useful and to speak to the work that is being done by us and our comrades. And I will get into the things. And again, thank you for joining us. So just to go through what we're going to be speaking about and give you a purpose of this call. When we say feasibility, we are talking about just generally how feasible it is for us to do a bailout where you are. We know that one of the real dangers of bail is that it works differently depending on your location. Even if you are in the same state, for example, I'm in New York, in New York City, bail works differently than it does in Buffalo, which is upstate. So really trying to have a grasp and understanding of the bail system in what you can do and how you can utilize bailouts as a tactic within the system which you currently organize and live within. So when we talk about feasibility, we're saying how feasible, depending on where you are, is it to do a bailout? And also asking what are the research questions? What are the questions? What do you need to figure out prior to actualizing a bailout? And then also when we related to needs assessment, just thinking about how do we do bailouts within the abolitionist framework and in the recognition that our people have needs that haven't been met. And the reason that they are in these cages is because of the criminalization of those needs. So we will be getting into those things today and talking about what is a needs assessment, what does that look like within our framework and the work that we do at National Bailout and the work that our members and comrades do and why it's really important to be thinking about prior to doing a bailout. And then I'm gonna go into a little bit of background real quick for y'all. And then Erica Perry from Wealth for Black Lives is gonna take us through a bail checklist and a needs assessment. And we're also going to have Delane talk us more through just some questions that we need to be asking, some questions that we are asking the folks that are doing bailouts right now, especially in this moment and while facing Corona or the Rona, asking them are you able to answer these questions and are you able to do these bailouts responsibly? So I'm going to share that with y'all in addition to some general feasibility questions. And then Mark Anthony is going to talk through needs assessment. What does that mean? Why is that necessary, especially in this time? And then we're going to have Dr. Nubian Sun in this out with just talking about how they've been meeting folks' needs in the South and what they've been seeing on the ground, what they've seen before, and what they are anticipating in this moment. So, and then of course, we're gonna leave it for some questions. So we know y'all be having questions. Questions are super important. So we're going to make sure that we have room for questions at the end. And again, my name is Arissa, and I'm with National Bailout. And for those who do not know, National Bailout Collective. It's a Black collective of organizers, abolitionists, lawyers, legal workers, and just straight up magic makers. We are a collective of currently 13 organizations and groups across the country that is creating and leading a movement to end pretrial detention and mass criminalization. And we've been using bailouts, particularly Black Mama's bailout, as a major tactic in order to do so. We came together back in 2017. It was an offering by our beloved Mary Hooks, and we've been doing bailouts ever since. And we've been also just making sure to get the lessons that we need and to do the work that we have to do in order to free our people in the tradition of our ancestors. We currently have 3 strategic priorities. Our priority is to continue to bail out Black mamas and caregivers, because that is what we do, that is what we created together, and that's how we get our people out immediately and change their material conditions, and also how we've been able to identify our leaders. Our second priority has been to provide thought leadership to folks. So that is through these calls or love leadership. And that has been through these calls and sharing our wisdoms and our lessons and our tactics and our strategies in love with everyone for our collective liberation. And we've also been doing that through the creation of resources such as a toolkit, which lives on the movement, which lives on our website at nationalbailout.org, and a curriculum that lives on the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table website. And also with the release, our soon release of our big Black Bail report that's set to come out in the summer. And some of the things that we'll be talking about today is going to be leaning into our toolkit. So if y'all want to like dig in deeper, figure out like when we talk about bailout plans or we talk about feasibility or like supportive services, if folks want to dig in deeper, you can always go on our website at nationalbailout.org and get a toolkit, and you'll see all of this stuff. Yeah, and you can print it out and all of it. And then our third and our last, but definitely not least, priority is to build political community with the folks that we bail out. So we recognize that we are not just bail payers, or nor are we supportive service providers, although both of those roles are deeply important. But we know that we are comrades and co-conspirators in our collective liberation, and we deeply see our liberation as tied to the folks that we bail out. And part of that is we invite them into organizing community as well. We recognize them as leaders, we recognize them as experts, and we want to be with them to move and shake and dismantle and build. So that is who we are, and all throughout that, and what y'all will hear through our panelists as well, is that we really, really try to meet the needs of our people. We know that our folks are always in crisis, unfortunately, because of infrastructure and criminalization, all of the things. But we really, really seek to support our folks through supportive services and meeting their needs, from long-term housing to childcare. So that is a little bit about National Bailout. That is what we do. And as I said, this is the needs assessment and feasibility webinar, and we are going to get into it with Erica, who's going to talk about just like a bail checklist and needs assessment. But before I pass it to them, also want to share that if folks are doing a bailout of their own, especially in response to COVID-19, we would love to, and also folks are preparing to do a Black Mamas bailout in May, as National Bailout does a week before Mama's Day. We would love to hear from you. We would love to learn about that, just so we can have a better understanding of the ecosystem. So you can do that by filling out our interest and participation form, which we'll put in the chat box. And also if y'all have like needs, because as we share, we really want to just be in a posture of an invitational posture and really provide our folks with just the lessons that we've learned. We are able to possibly assist with legal assistance through Law for Black Lives and supportive services things, or just technical assistance. So we just need y'all to fill out our interest and participation form, and we will holla. But I'm going to now pass it to Erica Perry, who's going to talk us through just a bailout checklist and also needs assessment as it relates to bailouts.
Hey y'all, Erica. Happy to see y'all. I hope it's a sunny day where you are. I'm calling from Nashville. I use any pronouns, and happy to talk to y'all about the bailout checklist and needs assessment. And so just want to name that we created a toolkit in, I believe, 2018. Sorry if the years are off, they're running together. That folks here can find on the National Bailout Collective's website. So I'll just go through a bit of kind of what we have. And so it's a number of things to consider as folks are planning bailouts and preparing to bail our people out of jail. and just naming that things are different depending on your jurisdiction. So it acts as like a guide and a kind of like a skeleton start to your planning. And so the hope then, y'all, is as we are preparing to engage in bailouts, is that we are creating a vision and goals and being really clear about our bailout actions goals and how we connect this to the work to end money bail. So for folks who are already inside of bailout campaigns or inside of campaigns to end money bail and pretrial detention, I think we're thinking through what it looks like to use the bailouts as a tactic inside of our campaigns that kind of act as escalation. And for folks who like this is, we are not in the middle of a campaign, we haven't started it yet, maybe thinking about the bailout actions as a way to start our campaigns to end money bail and pretrial detentions. I think we're also thinking about how we center Black leadership inside of our bailout tactics and inside of our campaigns, and what it looks like to collaborate with Black-led and Black-centered organizations. The other piece that feels really important as we think about creating our vision and goals is how we use this also as an organizing tool to deepen our relationships and to add capacity to our work. And so as we think about our vision and goals, then we want to be thinking about mapping out if there's organizing that is happening around ending pretrial detention and bail in our jurisdictions. And for some of us, you already know the answer to this because you are leading the work. So shout out to y'all. In other places, we'll have to do a landscape analysis to see who is leading that work in our city. And then another question around like, what are their politics? Do they align with abolitionist politics? And then as we do that, we decide whether it makes sense to try to work with that group of people. And I think we always kind of encourage collaboration where politics align and where it makes sense in ways that center Black leadership, that center abolitionist values. And then we talk a little bit about feasibility, which I think Delane's going to talk about more. But in that process, we're looking at what does it take to bail people out of jail? Who do we pay? Do we have the capacity to do that? How many people are on our squad that can help us find people, that can help us use the needs assessment to talk to our people, to get consent before we're bailing folks out? Who's on our supportive services squad? How are we doing that? In Memphis, we use bail buddies, other folks using case managers. So we're beginning to ask ourselves this question around like, who is our team and who is holding what work? And do we actually have the people in place to carry out this work? The other thing, y'all, is to be reaching out to find other local organizations that you want to work with based on your vision and strategy. And so I think the first step kind of is we want to be introducing the idea the bailouts as a tactic to our team and to the local Black-led organization to get their buy-in. And also just encouraging working with local organizations who are doing similar work. So for us, we were like, hey, reproductive justice feels important, and this actually is reproductive justice work. So we reached out to the local reproductive justice orgs in Memphis to be like, hey, can we team up with you to make sure the narrative is grounded in a reproductive justice framework and value. And then also we reach out to other organizations who were doing work around abolition or transforming the criminal legal system as other partners. It also feels important to reach out to the folks who are leading around supportive services and mutual aid to continue to like deepen our work and add some strength and capacity to our bailout efforts. And along those same lines, we want to be mapping supportive services organizations and providers. So one of the biggest challenges that we face as folks who have, done bailouts before is meeting the needs of, meeting the supportive services needs of the folks we bail out. And this feels pretty important as like one thing that makes us different, folks who are doing bailouts with and under the banner of the National Bailout Collective is like we are using the bailouts as a tactic to end money bail, but also we are using bailouts and supportive services as like a model and a vision for the type of world we want to create. And so it feels really important for us to map the supportive services providers in our jurisdictions, in our cities, to understand what is available and then what we may have to create. And so one of the things that we've been really thinking about in Memphis, where I had done bailouts before, is really we saw that there was no supportive services infrastructure, and recognizing that as we were mapping it out, both helped us to prepare for to determine what capacity we had to bail people out, but it also helped strengthen our demand around ending money bail and pretrial detention, and also strengthen our demand around invest divest. So we could very strongly articulate what it looks like to invest in social services, because we had already looked and found that the shit wasn't there. And so as we are mapping our supportive services, I just want to talk a bit about the needs assessment, which I think is the focus of this call. And so I got about 5 minutes, so I'm gonna talk about needs assessment for 5 minutes. So the needs assessment comes to us, one, from our homie, Mark Anthony Clayton Johnson, who's gonna talk a bit about it, his work later on in the call. And also we found ourselves using the language of needs assessment as we were bailing our people out, and we were seeing that like risk assessments were being used to determine how much a person's bail, whether a person even got out on bail, would be given bail, or whether they would be held in preventive detention. And we were like, oh, our people are not at risk, they have a need. And we knew this to be true as we were bailing our people out. And so over the past few years, as we've been engaging in bailouts, we have been using and designing needs assessments collectively as folks in Southerners on New Ground, folks in BLM Memphis, folks at the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, folks inside the National Bailout Collective, folks inside of Dignity and Power Now. And so we've been really coming together to design it. And so I think we'll share it with y'all soon, but over the past few weeks, we have developed the needs assessment that reflects the needs assessment that BLM Memphis uses, or Official Black Lives Matter Memphis uses, and the one that Center for Resilient Individuals, Families, and Communities, led by Nubian Sun, uses. And so that's really for us for folks who are able to do jail visits now, and I know many of us aren't, and so in some places we're using lawyers to do that, but we're giving our folks a needs assessment to ask them questions around who are your people, who's supporting you, do you have a housing need, do you have a transportation need, do you have the food that you need, are your childcare needs being met? If not, we ask them those questions, and then we go back to our team. So again, that's why we want to make sure we have a squad. We go back to our squad and we start figuring out how we're going to meet those needs. And so whether it's like you as the organizer giving it, or an attorney who's able to get on the inside right now because of COVID-19, we want to be giving our people a needs assessment. And we standardized it this year to make sure we're using to offer to use similar needs assessments, so we can be identifying gaps and be in conversation around struggling together to really meet those needs. And yeah, so I think like as we are using the needs assessment, and just to name the needs assessments that we're using, as I stated before, when we make the offering to meet supportive services needs and use the needs assessment to assess what our people need, the hope is that we're modeling what we want to create to replace pretrial detention, to replace money bail. So we're saying if we actually invested in our people, this is what it would look like. This is what our people look like when they are invested in. And so that's the offering with the needs assessment and the supportive services. This is really about sharpening our demand around ending money bail, around divesting from incarceration and jail, and investing in transportation, in housing. And the beautiful thing about the National Bailout Collective is that over the past few years, we have made a really intentional decision to invest heavily in supportive services. So folks who are like inside of this formation receive money to like make sure we are meeting our supportive services needs where the state falls short, or where like these fake ass nonprofits fall short inside of our local cities. And we know this should be true in Memphis, where housing may be provided by an entity that forces people to sit inside a Bible study or sit inside of some type of church before they can be given a bed. And so when we fall short, we mean like they actually are falling short in meeting our folks' needs. And so, yeah, hopefully folks are game to use the needs assessment and game to like use this as a model for creating like communities that are invested in by ourselves, by our people, and by our tax dollars. So I'll pass it to Delane to talk more about feasibility.
Cool. And I just thank you so much for that, Erica. Before Delane, you start, I wanted to see, I know you have to hop early, but I just wanted to see if there's folks that have any particular questions for you before you go.
For sure.
Miss Betty said good job.
Thank you, Miss Betty. Folks can also email me if you have questions, and then Mark Anthony, Arissa, Delane, Nubia are all familiar with the needs assessment work as well. But thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Erica. Okay, dope. All right, so thanks, Erica. Thanks, Arissa. Hey, everyone. My name is Delane, and I'm calling in from Chicago, where it recently hit over 70 degrees, so hype for that, and also was sunny, but now it's thundering. But I'm happy to be here. So we're going to come back to talk about needs assessment in a second, but wanted to go first into a bit more about the importance of needs assessments in local work, especially as a lot of places are pushing out really racist and harmful risk assessments. And we want to make sure that folks are having a good understanding of other feasibility research that's just really important and essential to do bills that are actually both individual and community centered, where we're not just getting folks out and then leaving them to fend for themselves, because that's not abolitionist work. Part of feasibility is really integrating all these really dope mutual aid networks and community care that we've been seeing in this moment into that bailout tactic. So the key to completing a really dope bailout is to be doing research about how it's working very specifically in your city. Erica had talked about how bail differs a lot based on your jurisdiction. So it's not only essential for being able to successfully bail folks out, but it's also essential to figuring out how to use your bail out in this larger practice of ending money bail and pretrial detention. And again, as Erica had said, we recognize that bails are a tactic of a much larger national campaign to end money bail and pretrial detention, and also standardize supportive services. And we know that these bails are also used as a way to get accurate data on the operationalization of bail and how it shifts depending on where you are. So especially in this moment, now more than ever, it's really important to know how bail works in your cities, as local jails and courts are closing and shifting their operations due to the Rona. And while this data and information may be readily available, so again, like how bail is operating, and while there may be laws and policies in place, even though we know a lot of laws don't keep Black folks safe, we also know that there are so many instances where these laws and policies are not followed, or when there are hidden agendas, or where there are practices that are not, there are practices in place that actually sidestep those policies. And so doing this research to understand the local bail process may involve working with community bail funds, with private criminal defense attorneys, with public defenders, with community organizations, and a lot of other folks. It has meant court watching at a time when we're actually able to get to the courts to see what actually is going down in the courtrooms when setting bail. Because again, a lot of those laws and policies are not being set. And so even if we have a very general understanding of how bail is operating because of things that we read, understanding that's not actually how it may be happening. And so when able to, it's also really important to be there in the space while these bails are being set. And so in addition to understanding the feasibility of a bailout in your local system, we also have to be working to identify ways, or creating ways to identify the folks that we're going to bail out. So for example, in New York, you can only pay bail for 2 folks at a time. And at this moment, restrictions are becoming a lot more because of COVID. In Pittsburgh, I had just learned that our comrade Medusa with Dignity Act Now collective moved us through that while bail may be being lowered for folks are getting extra detainers on them, federal, county, and parole detainers. And so even if their bail is paid for, they will still be held in because of those detainers. And other folks that we know are doing bailouts, their bail may be getting paid, but they're just still not being let out. And so as folks are moving through these feasibility, your bailout plan, figuring out how it works, doing all that research, talking to folks who have sat in courtrooms, and all those community members and public defenders and other folks, essential folks that we named earlier, there are some important questions to help folks create their feasibility plan, and to help folks identify how to find folks, how to find our people, how to find our Black mamas and caregivers to bail out. And these questions are really important to answer, again, because bail laws really differ based on jurisdiction. And so I'm going to move us through some COVID-19 related questions, and then Arissa is going to jump in and move us through just some of our general feasibility questions. So these are questions that we've been asking our people who are doing COVID-19 response bailouts to be really interrogating and thinking through it in conversation with their other comrades who will be bailing out folks and being on the bailout team, to make sure that, again, we're not just we're not just bailing out our people and then like leaving them dry. Like we actually know what they need via this needs assessment, and we're tapping into our networks and these resources and the people around us and mutual aid networks and community care to make sure that they're good. But there are questions that we need to move through in order to know if we actually have the ability to meet those needs. And so some of the questions we've been asking folks are, do they have housing? Are there places for these folks to go once bailed out? And we know that housing is a crisis everywhere. And especially during this moment, we want to make sure that folks have a place to go where they be held and where they also be welcomed. We have been hearing that there are shelters who are just like, you're coming out of jail and prison, we don't want you here because of the risk of COVID. But we also know that there's a deep hatred of our people, number one, and also those folks who have been put into cages, whose humanity has been stripped from them. So want to make sure that these places are places that they can be held and welcomed. And we're also trying to be really creative about how we meet those housing needs. So who's in our networks? And Arissa and I have been moving through this of who are the wealthy philanthropists who have unoccupied homes that our people can use, right? And also shout out in general to folks who are occupying all over the world vacant homes. Housing is a crisis, there should not be empty homes. Another question we've been asking folks is, are there any testing centers near you? And we know that in many places there are no testing centers, and in places that there are testing centers, you have to have a doctor's note in order to get tested. And the doctor has to say that you have symptoms. So we're also thinking about how to be really creative about that. And if folks on this call have resources and networks to help us with that, that'll be really dope. But we just been thinking about, where are our movement doctors? Where are our movement healthcare professionals who can help us get what we need to get our people tested? We've also been asking, do you have the capacity to do a bailout in the next week and a half, in the next 2 weeks? Knowing that this is a rapid response, we want folks to get out as soon as possible, but also asking our organizers of folks who are bailing folks out to be thinking really critically about, what is your capacity? What is your plan for your own wellness, for your family's wellness, for the other organizers' wellness? And is this possible in this moment? And with that, we've asked the question of, do you have the organizational capacity? Not only like the funds to bail folks out, but who are your people? Are you member based? What are their skills? What are their resources? Who are they connected to? And how do we pull that all into this feasibility plan? Because again, when we're doing this needs assessment and we have a whole bunch of needs that need to be met, we need to be pulling in our people. And we need to be assessing who's in our group, who's in our collective, or who is our extension outside of that can bring these things that our people need in. We've also been asking, what supportive services and resources are you connected to in your area? And again, just doing asset mapping, again, of the folks who are doing the bails, because we are connected to more people than we realize. We've asked, have you done a bailout before? Because that will drastically affect just your ability to move really quickly in this moment and make sure that we are taking care of our people and we're getting them out if this is your first bailout for this COVID-19 rapid response. We've been asking, can you get info to prioritize these vulnerable populations? And so we know that folks who are elderly, who are immunocompromised, who use substances, who are trans, who are pregnant, are either more at risk of getting COVID-19 for all the reasons that include anti-Blackness, that includes transphobia, that includes a hatred of bodies, and also know that these folks, if they do get COVID for the same reasons than others, may have greater complications. And so we want to make sure that we also are prioritizing these folks as well. And then, so those are some questions that we've been asking our folks who are doing bailouts. And we also have been supplementing our grantees with additional funds to make sure we also provide organizing stipends, but on top of the organizing stipend, have been adding a bit more funds to make sure the organizers have the essential gear if they are going out into the jails to bail out folks or whatever they may be doing. And so we've been supplying folks with funds to buy masks, to get gloves, to get soap, to get sanitizer, to get medicine, to get whatever they can find. And we also are looking into our network as well to figure out what we can find and how we can send them to our people. So yeah, and with that, I'll move us into, I'll pass to Arissa to move us into just more of our general feasibility questions that we've asked folks who are doing these bailouts.
Thank you, Elaine. So in addition to, and also just want to put the ask out, like from our last call, some folks hit us up that had like a mass connect. And if folks do have like, especially if you just want to figure out ways to support, and you do have connections as far as like gloves and sanitizer and things like that, please holla at us and we'll put our information at the end of this call. And so just to move y'all through just some other feasibility questions that are useful to ask, particularly when you are figuring out your plan, it's who is allowed to pay bail. Are there any legal restrictions on who can pay bail and how many people you can bail out? As folks previously shared, depending on where you are or sometimes who the clerk is that day, there might be some regulations and rules regarding on just like how you pay bail. When is bail set? So just thinking about like when is like the earliest point of intervention, or when do you think y'all can pay bail? Who sets the bail? It's particularly useful for like figuring out how to advocate on behalf of our people to lower bails. Also, who your targets are. Is there a lawyer present? Can you observe, as Elaine spoke to, court watching has been a useful tactic for folks to understand their local court and bail systems. So just like knowing like what's actually popping off when it does pop off is really useful, and court watching has been a really great tactic to do that. Where do you pay bail at? That's really going to be essential, especially now where we are seeing folks paying bail online or in different ways and mechanisms with the social distancing. What can you pay bail with? So, you know, some people can be really strict, some jurisdictions can be really strict on how you pay bail. So just knowing that beforehand, if it has to be a cashier's check, it has to be cash. Like we've seen our people have to like literally jump through hoops in order to pay bail. And folks that made it very challenging in order for them to do so. So just like knowing beforehand, and being prepared as possible will really be helpful. Can you pay a percentage of the bail? So in places like Philly, where they don't have bail bonds companies, you can pay a percentage of the bail. So recognizing like, is that the case where I'm at, or do I have to pay a full bail if I'm not using a bail bonds company? In a national bailout, we don't use bail bonds companies because we see them as targets and also as folks that are deeply invested in the maintenance of the money bail and pretrial detention system. What is the average bail amount? Particularly when folks are thinking about like fundraising goals, how many folks they could bail out, just like figuring out, just getting a really clear understanding of the landscape of just like, okay, bet it might be $10,000 for the average bail amount in New York, in Brooklyn, or in New York City, but that might look totally different in San Diego, California. So just like trying to figure out like what the average bail amount is to help inform what your fundraising may be, and also like how many folks you'll possibly be able to bail out and then support. Our final fees taken out. Y'all will also hear my 2-year-old in the background here and there. Our fines and fees taken out of bail. So just figuring out like, some folks know that as soon as you pay bail, you'll have certain fees taken out, or that like, you know, we all know that bail is used to criminalize people. So like, there are oftentimes fines and fees attached with bail. So especially if you're looking or depending on those funds to come back in order to continue to pay bail, right? If you're looking to start like a revolving bail fund, for example, just having that information ready to know how much money you need to like actually operate, or that you will need to pay the bail and to be fine and sustained after that will be really useful. And then so those are just like a few questions, and these are like some initial questions that we think will help folks get to a plan. And we also know, and as Elaine shared already, the COVID-19 question we really believe that like it's important, even in rapid response mode, to be as intentional as possible, and to have a thorough and comprehensive plan when moving and paying bail, and figuring out like, when moving and paying bail, and changing the material conditions of our people. Is really important to be as intentional as possible, and to figure out like what we're going to do beyond the bailout. And these questions will help with that as well. So, and if folks have additional questions, you can always speak to like local bailout groups in your area. National Bailout has operated in over 20 jurisdictions in the US. You can speak to your local public defender. They have been a great help to many of the groups that have thrown down with us. You can speak to their court clerk, get friendly with them, especially if you are paying bail often. You can speak to different organizers who may know the bail. You can speak to the people down the block who unfortunately have had a lot of run-ins with the bail system, right? So there are a lot of expertise and wisdom that can be tapped in, and you can always speak to us as well. And we'll be sharing our info at the end of this webinar, but we are available to help folks figure out like what the landscape is in their local jurisdictions in regards to pretrial detention and jails. And we encourage folks, especially if you want our help particularly, or you want us to tap into different groups within our network, you fill out the participation form so we can get a better understanding of the support that we need to give you. And also, if you are planning on doing a bailout currently, or doing a bailout for Black Mamas Bailout, filling out the participation form will be really, really helpful in order for us to make sure that we amplify your efforts and have a better grasp of the power and the magnitude of these bailouts. So I am now going to pass it to Mark Anthony, who is going to talk a little bit more about this needs assessment and the necessity of it, especially now.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, team. It's so good to see folks, and really excited to be on this webinar. So much really brilliant work that's happening, and NBO, the National Bailout, continues to move these tactics forward around bailing our folks out, because it's not just super critical, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's part of the visionary practice of seeing the world we want. And we see needs assessment as part of a contribution to that, right? I think Erica had named it earlier, that our folks are not risks, right? Our folks have needs. Our folks also have strengths, right? And some of our needs assessments that we've developed actually ask that. What are the skills you want to bring to this work? What are the assets and relationships you have in the community that we can help connect with and build as we're moving this forward, right? And I think in this moment, we see the tension and contradiction between our folks' well-being and incarceration, particularly pretrial detention, sharper than maybe it's been in a very long time. It's so visceral, it's so visible. We see it all around the country. Folks are fighting to get folks out of jails because it's abundantly clear that detention, carceral facilities, by nature undermine our folks' health. But certainly in this context, decades of locking our folks up are putting our folks really in a serious harm's way. And so we use a needs assessment approach to capture our folks back, to build the resources of our folks, but also because we have a vision of the world we want, right? And so a lot of things that have been said are really critical right now to lift up, right? In this moment where states of emergencies are making local governments move in ways that we haven't seen them move resources in ways that we haven't seen them move, where folks are on the ground, as was named earlier, capturing housing on a daily basis. There's a lot of really important opportunities. And we see the needs assessment as a way to map out what our folks' needs are, what the gaps are, and to really advance this campaign to move resources into those things, right? To think about what are the ways in which our acute response to getting folks out in this moment builds the long-term vision of healthier communities, of robust resources, of our demands being met across the board. A lot of us who are doing this work, a lot of us who are part of NBO, who are doing bailouts as a part of campaigns to stop jail construction, to close jails, are saying the same things we've been saying for years. And in this moment, in this moment of emergency, those demands are making more sense than ever, right? We see folks talking about get our folks out because pretrial detention is a harm to people's health. Pretrial detention interrupts people's housing. Pretrial detention interrupts and separates families. And again, a lot of the demands that we see to bring people home, to bring people connected to their resources, and to scale those things up, we see as a very clear opportunity right now to make that happen. And so we're in this really exciting moment. We're in this really urgent moment. And as we do the bailouts this round, we get to actually experiment with this. We get to actually test this, and we get to actually build on that work and build on a lot of the campaigns that folks are doing to bail folks out, and move those demands forward and move resources over that we've been fighting for a very long time. And so again, this needs assessment is so critical in this moment because there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of nimbleness of the state that we haven't seen in a while. And so we will have the opportunity to use the needs assessment work to build that up. And we have multiple tools that we are trying to use, and multiple avenues. We know at different contexts, different places around the country, there are different ways in which a needs assessment makes sense. And so we have some ability to be flexible in thinking about how can it apply to your particular landscape, your particular campaign as well. And so we want to keep that in mind. So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're up to. And we're happy to answer any questions as well. And also just to say, it's also a moment to organize service providers, and happy that Nubian is on here as well. Nubian is doing tremendous work on that front, and certainly across the country in this moment where we've seen that there's a clear call to get folks out of jail for health reasons. We see a clear call on the attention that pretrial is having and detention is having on Black people's health, particularly as it relates to COVID-19. There's a mandate for healthcare providers to throw down in a very serious way in this moment to support the grassroots demands that have been pushing. And so want to offer that up and pass it to Nubian, who's going to talk to us about meeting folks' needs in this moment.
Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be among the brilliant on today. I want to piggyback off of Mark Anthony's comment about nimble. This is a very, we are seeing things come through very quickly. Policy changes come through very quickly. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the middle. I have some notes, so I won't be talking y'all ears off. As we have been talking about the importance of the needs assessment, and I share the gratitude and more attorneys, more clergy, and in the past we've got folks kind of clergified, meaning going online to register as clergy in order to get inside of the facilities. And in that same space, I believe there needs to be more training and support for folks all around. This thing is hitting all of our facets. And as we push to support others, the entities that we exist in would benefit from supporting us, the folks doing the work, and day in and day out. And it doesn't mean, it means monetary, it also means healing support, crisis support, all of those things, supervision even, problem identification and strategy, all of those things are needed in terms of support. The assessment is important, like we've been talking about, in terms of relationship building. And what happens in the assessment is an opportunity in connecting with another individual. That's why rapport is important to establish, the first moments you are in contact with another individual. Also amping up your interviewing skills of talking to someone, and how to conduct interviews, and also kind of expanding the need. And what I mean about that, you are connecting and asking about different, different things down a list of what people need. But there's power in recentering people in terms of their need as part of the solution, and not just so disconnected from the solution, like treating people as, okay, these people have a need, let's go ahead and get it. These people have a need, we can make it happen. This is a collective walk, this, especially now in terms of COVID. It's not just about the person having a need, it's about themselves being centered in the solution of getting the needs met. When it comes to the main issues today with, they're the same things that have been stretched and a challenge just on 10 at this time. Housing, of course, food, healthcare, advocacy, especially in terms of bail, but also rent. Folks are having a lot of threatening interactions with folks they stay with, or their landlords, their jobs. Folks are not feeling that safe at work, and have been, I know in New Orleans, we've been having a lot of talks and strategy about protecting our grocery store workers. Who there's one main store that won't let folks wear PPE mask, and a little bit of glove protection, but no mask for the folks. So just pushing and thinking about strategy around that. So we need an increase of legal support to help folks and educate folks on what their rights are, and to help revision how they can keep themselves safe. And also our current social service infrastructure, there was splinter at first, but now it's really splintered. And our services have moved mostly digital, which presents existing technological barriers with doing assessments by phone, doing home visits by Zoom, if they have a computer, if they have a phone with those capabilities, and then the barriers to getting access to those. So we're here, and the technology has made it even more of a strain in meeting folks' needs. And one forecast that we keep talking about is the mental health implications of all these things and of these times. Not, for folks who existingly struggled with basic needs, but also the folks in providing, you and I, all these people on these calls, and the folks, in the other social service entities. I have a deep concern for mental health as we go. In the nimble aspect, a lot of policies have been quickly passed that we've been pushing for like six or 7 years, which was telehealth. We wanted people to be able to be seen and not have to come out of their house, because one barrier to services is transportation. So we advocated heavily on that. And even our Medicaid, our clients who have Medicaid, there was heavy advocacy. And so now everybody said, you can do telehealth, you can do telehealth, and it's rooted in the fear of financial loss and not the need. But we're doing that now with telehealth, and trying to move through the barriers, the technological barriers. But a lot of social services places who had these strong grips no longer have them anymore. They're more open, to more people coming in. So it's a lot of things are changing very, very quickly in that. One piece that I think would be beneficial is contacting our funding partners, even folks, our funders, on all of the scales, and asking to redirect our funds to general operating funds, and not really asking but demanding, really, to shift or to change funds for general operations, so we can move to mutual and more advocacy, mutual aid advocacy, and some care for our own folks doing the work. Also, folks have been making their own PPEs, their own personal protection equipment. Folks have been growing their own gardens and food, and also have been very creative with doing technology banks where people can borrow computers. And one big barrier also is around the government provided benefits, navigating how to get online and apply for food stamps, how to apply for the temporary aid for needy families, all of those things, those websites, and even unemployment, those websites are struggling and blacking out on folks. And there's a list of materials, and some folks are stressed and need help finding those, pay stubs and all of that. So there's a great need for folks to help with that navigation of how to apply for stuff, because it's really hard to be already stressed, and then a computer, which you have, troubles with anyway, possibly, acting up, and then you're trying to get help, you're trying to feed your children, you're trying to feed yourself, you're trying to make it to the next hour. So we need folks to help us navigate better. Another thing, again, that organizer support and helping folks as we strive even to be more intentional about folks who are directly impacted, funding and taking care of organizers. And also there are a lot of beautiful mutual aid partners, in the back of their truck, pulling, getting stuff, food from different places, dumpster diving, doing a lot of creative things to feed, sharing meals. So it would be great to encourage not only us, but encourage other folks to restructure their funds in a way to help those mutual aid informal folks who are taking care of their own community and putting themselves out in harm's way, especially those groups, Black, transgender, nonconforming groups that are here, especially in New Orleans, that are really putting themselves in harm's way and getting folks fed and getting folks taken care of. So yeah, that's my spiel. The testing continues to be a challenge. I've been telling people to just go in coughing and tell them you got all the symptoms. Because it, and folks have been cracking up at me, but I'm like, really, that's the only way a lot of times you'll get testing. And I was tested about 2.5 weeks ago and still don't have the results. So yeah, the testing thing is a constant question mark every day. Once we feel like we have a handle on it, we're like, okay, back to square one. And I feel that we'll do a lot of that. Have a plan and then wait a minute, have a plan. But the key is to stay encouraged and stay in the fight, to continue to plan and continue to maybe, erase and start over again, but not to give up, especially in this time, and to think about supporting each other and using what you have and your privileges and your connections of what you have to help folks. Any questions?
Thank you, Vivian. I was curious if you had anything else, because someone asked a question about housing that I'm going to get to, but if you had anything else that like supportive service providers are utilizing in this time, or other ways or other possible tips for people to provide support now?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Oh, if you had any to share or just been around and support and
You're,
pivoting.
you're correct. Your connection is a little.
Did you hear me?
You said, do I have? I'm
I
sorry.
may have broken up.
Yeah, I think her internet's bugging. I think what Arissa was asking is, as a service provider, do you have any tips around the types of around ways to provide support to folks who are being released, and also what just y'all are seeing happening in this current moment due to the Rona, and like connecting that to the needs assessment and ability to meet folks' needs.
Mm-hmm. So now we have been in community and asking folks in our network to reconfigure their funds and to call their funders in order to support mutual aid groups, like people who are in the community, providing food, in addition to, connecting people with the resources to get food from the school stops here in New Orleans. We have our community centers and other passionate folks who deliver food at least twice or three times a day to families and for children. Some other tips for service providers is to, again, with the funding, but also looking in your networks and seeing who has housing and seeing what gaps exist and sort of looking at opportunities to fill in those. What would it take to fill in those gaps? And on the other side, what would it take for those gaps to not exist? Because it may be funding, or it may be staff, or we need volunteers for this. So just sort of doing an audit, like being in constant audit mode. And that is something that we always encourage folks to do when you're doing the bailout, to scan your environment, to have relationships, but also be in constant audit mode of why people can't have services, why people can't, mental health agencies can't go into the prison and do an assessment for somebody that needs to come into a halfway house. Why, so addressing those gaps and then seeing what you can do as organizations. So, and just encouraging people to sign on to the petitions, sign on to, and create, if you haven't done advocacy before as an organization, committing interns and other people and training them up to do advocacy, to do more demand work, pulling in interns to do more work around helping people navigate the social services online. It can be a nightmare. I spent 4 hours on a line for somebody the other day. So the unemployed, so skilling up in those areas. But I think number one is moving that money around. If you had a big event canceled, what would it look, if you had a festival council, a festival or a conference, what would it mean to redirect that money into helping people existing in the community serve and meet those needs?
Thank you, Nubian. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Elaine, Mark Anthony, Nubian, and Erica for joining us the evening here, but I know folks on the West Coast it's the afternoon. But thank y'all for joining us, and we're now going to open it up to some questions. So we had a question from Ellen, who said, amazing, y'all are amazing, we are amazing. And just like had a question about like how are folks considering availability of housing as a factor in making decisions about who to bail out? They just started in Montgomery, and the decisions are really hard. And I would say like we are definitely, especially with the COVID bailouts, like we are like saying like people have to, either they can go home, go back to a family member's house or a community member's house or whomever, or like we identifying some sort of housing support, but we are saying like now in this time, especially when people have stay at home orders in place, like we actually have to be able to guarantee them a place if we're going to bail them out. So it's definitely hard, and I think we always face with these difficult decisions, but now it's like even more difficult. But we are also naming that like a win for us is getting one person out and like cared for and their needs met, right? So if that means that you are only able to get one person out and provide them with housing for the next 6 months, like in food, like that's a win. So I just would say like to just reorient around goals and like capacities. I'm curious if other folks have thoughts.
I think also, yeah, echoing what Arissa said, housing, we are always in this housing crisis. And what we've been realizing and seeing now is that there are folks who have, it's also like, how do we get more creative with finding housing? I know a lot of hotels are shutting down. Some Airbnbs are no longer allowing folks to stay in there, or if you are able to stay in an Airbnb, to have at least isolated yourself for a week. And so we're just like, how can we get, again, like movement doctors, service providers to write doctor's notes for folks so they can get those tests, so that they can get, so they can be cleared or whatever it may be, and then they may be able to get to those Airbnbs. Or we've also been realizing there, as we know, people have been occupying vacant homes. So who do we know that has money? Who do we know that has summer houses, who have winter houses, who have lodges, whatever it may be, and how can we also ask those folks to provide that for us in this moment, and also always, because there should be no vacant homes, there should be no vacant spaces when there's so many folks who don't have houses, who are houseless. And so just like thinking about who can we tap, who are those people who have this already. Not that we need to go searching for housing, but it's how housing already exists, and there's so many that are just like empty. And then really tapping into all the amazing occupying that we've been seeing across the country, studying their strategies, how they're able to occupy, what like legal precautions they had to take, or who they're able to bring into their organizing work to mandate that this is a home that we're going to stay in for the duration of this time, and that happened. So just again, imagining being really creative with that.
Thank you, Delane. We also had a question, speaking of folks with resources, we have a question from a member of Resource Generation. A shout out to y'all, because there's folks at Resource Generation that actually, we made an ask, and it was folks at Resource Generation that had stated to us that they did have homes that people can stay in. So yes, like mutual aid, there's always an opportunity for mutual aid beyond and before the Rona. So want to name that. But the member, Tori from Resource Generation, is basically asking if there's places that people that are doing bailouts in the Bay, and we do have folks at SC Justice Group who will be doing a bailout in the Bay and can connect y'all directly. And Miss Betty is on here, and also Tita Lyle is on here, but can connect y'all directly.
Can y'all drop your email addresses? Either Tori drop your email addresses, or
Yeah.
Betty, Miss Betty, and okay, there we go. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay.
And then we have a question from Amal, who asks if folks are just starting off and don't have a bail fund system in their state, where's the best place to start? So we definitely ask folks to check out our toolkit. It's an amazing guide. A lot of things that we've been speaking about on this webinar has come from that toolkit, and it really, really like helps get you started and to make a bail plan and some of the questions that we ask. And we can send we will be sending this webinar out to y'all because it has been recorded. You can like capture some of those questions that we share, and really encourage you to go on our website at nationalbailout.org to share, to learn and to download the toolkit. And you can also reach out to us if you have specific questions based on your locale. And I didn't name that, but where we are going to be doing some COVID bailouts now. And so if folks want to like learn more about that, we will be doing bailouts in Jackson, Mississippi, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in Atlanta, Georgia. Dwayne, help me out if I'm missing anything. And I'm going up the top of my dome, y'all. I feel like I'm freestyling, but I'm not really freestyling. What are we doing? We are doing it in.
Okay, so we've said Atlanta, we said Detroit, Oakland, and the Bay.
In LA.
LA, what'd I say?
Yeah.
LA, Pittsburgh.
Philly, the Philly Community Bell Fund.
Las Vegas, folks are doing it in St. Louis, Missouri. No, I'm lying. In St. Louis, Illinois, as well as Kansas City in both Missouri and Kansas City in Kansas.
Yes. So those are the folks that are holding down the COVID bailout. So if one of those places you stay or want information, you can definitely highlight us and we can connect y'all. It will be really helpful if you have particular asks, so we can make sure to answer correctly and thoroughly. Let's see if there's any other questions. There's a fundraising question. We have a set event next month, and now there's some uncertainty for funds. Vicente, can you share your location around fundraising? And we are going to be having like a comms kind of fundraising call in the next 2 weeks. So it won't be on the 15th, but it will be on the 22nd, which we'll be able to give tips around fundraising strategies, but that may be too late. Tampa, Florida. So there are folks that are doing the New Florida Majority, and I know Dream Defenders is doing bailouts as well out in Miami, and New Florida Majority will be doing some in Miami as well. So I could definitely connect y'all. But we are seeing, especially now, folks are wanting to give. A lot of folks don't know what to do in this moment, right? Some folks feel stuck and helpless, and the folks that have resources are really moving in there with their heart and minds and spirit to give and to support folks, especially folks that are at greater risk for the Rona. So we'll just really encourage y'all to use y'all skills and like creativity to like go on fundraise digitally as much as possible. And if y'all want to send us more information about what y'all are doing and the work that y'all doing, we can also amplify it on our channels too. Yes, Amal, you can fill out the form for trying to start a bailout in Utah, and we'll put the form again. Cool, so there's another question about how we are thinking about violence in the home in this moment when people are homebound. If someone wants to take that.
Okay, so I know one question that we've been asking the needs assessment, the standardized needs assessment that Erica is speaking about in the beginning is getting a sense of who are folks' emergency contacts, as well as who are the folks that you trust and who support you, and who are essentially like who are your people. And there are also questions around just getting a sense of like, where would you return to and what would that situation be like for you? And so, which is why, again, it's really important to know these things before folks get out so that you can have things set up. If they're not able to go home, I know, again, housing is a crisis and we're trying to figure out how to get really creative and find folks houses. But if that's not a place that is safe in this moment, then where are the places that they can go? Again, like how can we get them doctor's notes to get tested and be able to go to an Airbnb or a shelter if they're actually letting folks in, or someone has an extra house, we can let them in there. So yeah, just like getting that needs assessment out and asking those questions, and also being, I think a lot of times we're really engaged and supportive and in conversation with the folks who are built out, but we're not in conversation with their people, and we don't know who their people are. We don't know who keeps them safe, who helps them feel safe. We don't know where those people are, how to reach them. And so I think also in getting assessment of like, is this the situation that might happen when you get home? Who are those 3 to 5 other people that we can be in direct contact with at all times? Or when we're not hearing from you, as a way to also not keep track or not keep track of our people, because we don't need to be hunting them down, but folks that we know are in their community, are in community with them, that can provide additional support, and possibly like physical support, if that is something that we know they might be dealing with as well. So again, just like getting a community care, getting a sense of who the people surrounding them that you also need to be in community with when you build them out as well.
Yeah, and also part of like the needs assessment and how we are incorporating it into our bailouts, we are asking folks for, as Elaine said, their folks, like who their folks are. And we do still ask people for consent to bail them out, because we recognize that everybody don't want to get out. And we want to make sure to honor folks' autonomy in every situation. So if folks like express to us that they don't want to be bailed out for whatever reason, then we will not bail them out. But also, especially depending on folks' charges, we will and we also want to gain consent from the folks who was named as their contact, right? To be actually in communication with folks. I know I don't like when people be playing on my phone or calling me, if I don't know them. So just I think in that's an opportunity for people to express to us that oh, so-and-so actually can't come here. Or if they're thinking about coming here. And I think that then leaves us an opportunity to figure out where they can go. So we are really working very diligently and intentionally to not cause or exacerbate any harms or any violence, while understanding and then recognizing that violence is happening, right, and continues to happen, especially while people are remaining in cages. This is a violent situation that they are under, and we want to get them free, and we also don't want to be doing anything or exposing folks to further violence. So we're definitely being as cautious and responsible and moving slow while moving fast, if that makes sense, right, while rapidly responding. So that's what we're doing. And if folks can't go there and they don't have nowhere else for folks to go, then there's some hard decisions that sometimes have to be made. And when you do this work and when you sign to do this work, we're signing up to make those as well. Cool. Do folks have other questions? If not, we deeply appreciate y'all. Y'all can contact us at info@nationalbailout.org if you want any one specific emails, or if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, whatever that comes to your heart, mind, and spirit, you can definitely holler at us. And we are out here, y'all. If y'all want to learn more about our work, you can visit us at nationalbailout.org. If you want to support and donate, you can donate at nationalbailout.org. We are in the midst of fundraising, how we are going to be best equipped to handle this crisis and the crises that will continue to happen as we exist under these systems. Is going to be through the support of our community members in all of the ways. So if you want to support us, especially right now through donations, you can do that at nationalbailout.org, and we deeply and greatly appreciate it. And yeah, we will be here next week, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be going a little bit more into supportive services, and we will also be talking about post-healing for organizers and for the folks who we bail out. So same place, same time. Peace to y'all.
Thank you.